Coming up, what if the Nuggets got even younger? What if they actually sent some of their young guys for a draft pick in this draft? Plus, fallout from the Josh Kroenke boneheaded comment of the week continues. And if the Celtics can reload, why can't the Nuggets? All that and more on Swipe and Gripe on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being an everydayer, hanging out with us Monday through Friday. I do appreciate you guys joining us. I'm Matt Moore, senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I write a Denver Substack called The Denver Dig. We'll have some more thoughts on the stuff that we'll talk about today on that one for you tomorrow if you sign up. Joining me is Swipa. He's at Swipa Cam on YouTube, on Twitter. You can catch his post-game shows after every single Nuggets game, gives his thoughts all throughout. He's also on Player's Choice, an excellent program that you should subscribe to. Today's show, we will talk about, I want to ask the core four question one more time about this in relation to how the Boston Celtics have kind of reconfigured their team. We'll talk about that later. I want to get into a quick draft question with Swipa about how, if the Nuggets, just as a hypothetical, wanted to consolidate young guys instead of just running it back. We'll talk about that, but we will start today with, of course, more fallout from Josh Kroenke's comment about trading Nikola Jokic in the event of injury and disaster, basically, befalling the Denver Nuggets. ESPN saw it. ESPN got a hold of it. And so ESPN did what ESPN does. And they took the opportunity to talk about a player potentially changing teams and made it into one of their segments this morning. So we got the full get up, first take.
Maybe NBA Today. I haven't checked.
Yeah. That whole thing today. Got to hear Ryan Blackburn's question about it right there on the, Ryan was all like, look, Mom on TV. So Swipa talked to you yesterday kind of about it, and Swipa, you said something this morning about how if there hasn't been a phone call to Jokic, there needs to be one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a spectacular, stupendous day. Hope you're whitewater rafting as Jokic was, so he didn't get to see what happened yesterday. Some of this is as simple as, for me, Matt, everything is relationships. And when you make comments like that, it's like, if you're married or if you're in a relationship and, your wife say she's the best wife of all time, or your spouse, the best spouse of all time. They do everything. I'm talking about they're breadwinners, they cook, they clean, they great mother, great father, great parent. They do it all. I mean, I'm talking about do everything. They even built the house. Like, they can fix stuff at will. I mean, they're just all around a superstar. And then, you're just talking about something and you're talking about like insurance or whatever else. It's like, yeah, I mean, if the house ever caught on fire, I mean, the worst thing is I'll have to get a divorce, just because hey, I don't want to deal with this, the outcome and the fallout of rebuilding. It's like, what do you mean? So you would get rid of the love of your life? The one who has made your life this way, you would get rid of them instead of just simply rebuilding the house? Or, hey, we don't need this couch. Hey, we don't need this refrigerator. We don't need this bed. We don't need any of these things. But what I do have, I got somebody that I can get into war with every day that's going to make sure we're right where we need to be. For me, man, I just thought it was such a just lack of perspective, one, for the second apron. For two, it was, I think, a lack of, in that moment, understanding of who exactly is building this ship that you're on, like the contender ship the Nuggets are still in, is because of Jokic. I think that when you're dealing with a player that has done the things for Denver he's done, and Matt, I think too, some of this is, to be fair, as quiet as he's not been raising alarms. He's not been, going against people behind the scenes all the time. He's not just openly on the network complaining about people. He's not doing any of that. Like Jokic, we've talked about this multiple times. There are multiple people that put together hey, these are the all-time great players. These are the level of all NBA All-Stars or DPOYs or all defense vote players they played with. Jokic has played with zero. So I think he's dealt with it because he's willing to do it. And for me, I think making that comment seemed to undermine just how important he actually is. And also, it felt to me at the time, Matt, that KSC and Josh, they almost think they're bigger than the organization on that. Like, getting rid of Jokic is the solvent, as opposed to KSC. Your job is to make sure that that player has what he needs. That's what I'm saying. I think it was a misguided quote because it seemed to center the importance of KSC and their money as opposed to building around this generational player. And I'm saying, while billionaires might think that, from an organizational standpoint that are built around players, this is Michael Jordan. You'll never have another Jordan if you're a Chicago Bull. So it's your job to make sure that player has what they need. That's what it felt like. So it could have been just a small deal, but I think as you saw the way the headlines go, and maybe Josh didn't realize this, Jokic has so much motion on the global scale as a basketball player at this point, that the moment you say something like that, it's going to flare up not just on NBA Twitter, not just on local sports shows. It's going to flare up on national and international broadcasts, which it has not even 24 hours later.
Yeah, I think that's all reasonable. I think I always try and think of these things as, what are the follow-up questions here?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I want to start here. The reason that I sometimes push back on KSE criticism is not because I am in bed with ownership. I don't talk to Josh Kroenke.
Sure.
I don't talk to anyone at KSE. I'd be happy to have conversations with them at any point. Would love to hear about him because I like knowing more before I speak.
Yeah.
I am, how can I put this? Generally speaking, the position I've taken is I would rather be for the fans.
Sure.
And then for the players. Well, actually, for the fans, and then for the coaches, and then for the teams, and then for the players, and then for the owners.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, I'm always in kind of favor of let's go from least advantaged to most advantaged. The other thing, though, the reason that I do sometimes wind up being defensive is because, for me, I think you need to be careful when you criticize ownership so that they can't dismiss you when you do.
Sure.
And when I look at a statement like this, there is part of me, Swipa, that honestly goes, do you want to know how ridiculous this is? This is so ridiculous that ESPN on First Take talked about it. That's like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, this isn't something serious. It wasn't discussed on Sports Reporters, RIP. This isn't discussed on serious programming. It's discussed on ESPN's nonsense in the mornings. And the reason it is not because of any sort of reality behind it or any sort of like, let's really get into the nuances and discussions and what makes, like, what is he actually saying here? What it actually is just doing is, could Jokic be traded to the Lakers? That's all they want. That's all they want. And we know that. I think your comments about them being bigger. So they have Michael Jordan. Did the Bulls stop existing after Jordan left?
Well, kind of, until about 2000.
No, are they still like a multi-billion-dollar business?
Yeah, they are. They sell out every game as well, I believe.
Right.
Like that. Yeah.
So now I'm not disputing that they're badly managed and the team hasn't been good enough. That's not what I'm saying. But when the team is yours and that is your business, you do have to have like, that is where my interest lies. And I actually tend to think, I personally will tell you, I would rather the organization be like, no, this is who we are. Because the Spurs honestly did this with Kawhi. Like, and I think that was the right thing to do, was to be like, no, like, this is how we don't do that. Like, this is how we run our organization. No one guy is bigger than the entire thing. And when you start getting into that, and Joker hasn't even asked for that. My other question here is just like, coming up, this is the one I really want to ask Swipa. Is, do you really, really, really think Jokic cares? We'll talk about that up next on Locked On Nuggets. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. Maybe it's like the AC, heating and cooling in the summer. I know a lot of folks having those problems right now. If the person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your computer communications and customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone's offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OPENPHONE.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. I appreciate you guys being with us here on a Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit of draft coming up. We'll get into some other questions about rebuilding. We'll have a post-draft show for you tonight with Ryan Blackburn. We're not expecting anything big to happen. If something does, and obviously you can count on a high energy emergency podcast. Okay. So I want to hit some comments here real quick. David Shea says, Matt, you're right and wrong at the same time. I can argue the Nuggets specifically succeeded in spite of the Kroenkes, not because of them. I understand you saying that. I think at some level you have to be reasonable. If you care about being reasonable, which you don't have to be as a fan, you can be unreasonable. That's your right. But if you care about being reasonable, you have to acknowledge they've won championships with the Rams, with the Avalanche, with the Mammoth, and with the Nuggets. Like on some level, we probably need to acknowledge they've been pretty good at running sports teams. I made this point in an article about the Dig. It's just like, I think you have to acknowledge they're good at running sports teams. They don't do it the way you would prefer, because we all would prefer that the owners spend whatever they have to and go to every single measure and go and like whatever it takes. And they don't do that, but they've been successful enough. I think you have to validate that. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to hit you with that question first?
Whichever. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You react to this, and then I'll ask you the question about Yoke.
Yeah, I think you always give people credit, but I mean, at the end of the day, you needed Nathan McKinnon and Kel McCarr to win that championship with the Avalanche in 22. Okay, you had 2 of the 6 best players in the world. Like, you do need that, and you do need to build your roster around those players. You had an MVP and a 2-time DPOY, who's one of the best offensive defensive players of all time. And then if you look at the Rams, you had Matthew Stafford, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You had Aaron Donald, arguably could be the best defender of all time behind Lawrence Taylor. I mean, there are things you need. Jalen Ramsey was on that roster. There are a lot of things you need to be successful. And I think you can definitely point to that. But I also am saying on the Nuggets side, how long have they owned the Nuggets, Matt?
I don't have the number in front of me. 25 years?
It's been quite some time. And they've been to the conference finals twice. Or 3 times over that period. And the first time obviously was the Melo days. Then you did twice so far. Go ahead.
My response there would be, do you know when Josh started to actually start having a voice in the organization? Like, I've hinted at this before. And Josh
2000, go ahead.
Like, Josh obviously loves his father and respects his father and admires his father. And that's evident. Sure. He points credit to him as constantly as he can. I would tell Nuggets fans that I have a lot more optimism about the future of KSE than I do about the past.
Well, but I think we're getting lost on 2 different things. I think you give people credit for what they've done, but I also can say additionally that the way they've managed the past 2 years in the new CBA, I think they've also made some wrong decisions based on basketball decisions, from Calvin Booth to allowing for that issue to delve into what it is. They are adopting a new strategy. Remember Ryan Blackburn, when he asked a question to Josh yesterday, he said it was abnormal. They didn't like that word. So then he used the word that basically unorthodox. We're unique. We're just different in how we do it. You saw yesterday in the press conference when they were being lobbed questions about personnel, they said, hey, either one of you, John Wallace or Ben Tenzer, whoever's doing this, whichever would like to answer the question. So you have 2 GMs basically you're talking to. So yes, it is unorthodox. But I think for me yesterday, the reason why you don't make comments like that, I think that, again, it's fine to think that ownership and stuff is bigger than the team. But I'm saying in this moment, though, if you had the Avalanche talent on this roster, that'd be one thing. But they don't. If you had the Rams talent on this roster when they won a championship, and maybe even right now, but they don't. And they didn't have that. Even when they won the title, they didn't have that kind of talent. There are a lot of things that went together, but I think Jokic, by and large, like being the player that he is has been why this organization has been where it's been. And I think that's why those comments yesterday felt a little bit potentially dismissive. So you can ask your next question now, because I think that's another part of that conversation.
I do want two things. I want to note, some people are asking me like, well, you'll have to change your thing. No, I will continue to say this. The Nuggets are not trading Nikola Jokic unless he requests a trade. They will never do it unless forced to. And there's no point in talking about it before he does so, if he ever does so. Thanks, management. Still hold to that. They're not going to trade Nikola Jokic. It's not going to happen. I'll stand by that. Two, I do think, by the way, like some of the people in the comments, I just want to let everybody know, just real clear on my position. I think Ryan and Swipa are both very welcoming to every fan. And especially if you're like a Jokic fan and you care about Jokic, you're more than welcome here. I personally, if you come into this comment section and talk about they should trade Jokic to a team that is good and a good organization, why don't they trade him to the Lakers? Because you are Bosko Banovic. I personally don't care what you have to say. This show for me is about Nuggets fans. I cover the Denver Nuggets. If you would like to start Locked On Jokic, you can. But that's not what this show is for me personally. I'm here for the fans of the Denver Nuggets. So Swipe, my big thing here is just like, I don't think any of it matters to Jokic. I don't think he cares. Josh and Jokic have a pretty close relationship. I feel very confident that that relationship will far extend over anything said in front of the media, because Jokic in particular hates talking to the media, in part because he hates how he always has to watch what he says. He's constantly worried that what he says is going to get misinterpreted and turned into a headline and be this whole headache. I do not think that what Josh said registers with Jokic at all if he hears about it, which I doubt he will.
Maybe. I don't know. But I think for me, it's just some things don't need to be said. I think the effect of something doesn't make something unnecessary to say. So that's more so what I'm saying, because the effects of something, we don't know what they're going to be, because Jokic, who knows what he's doing right at this moment. But I think some of this is too, I would argue that Brad Stevens and the Celtics ownership, they're also in a similar situation where their best player has an Achilles tear. But instead of saying we're going to retool by offloading Jason Tatum, they're retooling by offloading everything around Tatum, because for them, their gym, their franchise cornerstone, and where they're headed as an organization rest on the legs of a 26-year-old. And I think that's the difference. So that's why I'm saying that, like, that perspective seemed misguided, because it seemed as if that was something that was an option for them in their doomsday clause. I don't even know for the Celtics if trading Jason Tatum is their doomsday clause, because right now they're getting rid of all of their best players all around the roster because they want to retool and get ready for 2026-27. So I think it's a matter of perspective. But I think, again, not what?
I mean, dude, they did all this to save the luxury tax money.
This is
new
agree.
Ownership coming in and saying, dude, we're not paying for this.
No, I understand that, but I think they were also talking about the money implications for themselves as well. That was what the Second Nation conversation was about. So them bringing up the clause of the doomsday of having to trade Jokic, that was his comment about, this is how we would, at the very last resort, deal with the second apron and the money that would be tied up in having injured players on the roster. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. I think for me, the way I kind of interpret it is, let's say, God forbid, that one of the core four on a multi-year, long-term deal suffered a career-ending injury, but they could not get out of the career-ending. Like, it took too long, and they were going to be out multiple. Like, they knew what it was going to kind of be like, right? If you can't contend, this is why the Bucks had to look at trading Giannis. They had to look at it. If you don't have any option, I honestly think that's more about, like, it's not fair to him or us. Like, there's no win here. Now, I think you should never put yourself in that position, right? And that's what you've advocated for. And a lot of my frustration is that I don't think that they did. I think that they did what they needed to, and then the CBA changed the rules. And when we talk about the core four here in a minute, that to me is like, that's where I buck up against, like, you got to deal with reality here. You're never going to be in a position to trade Jokic if you just don't commit to the core four. That's the difference here, is that they want to have their cake and eat it too. They don't want to break up what they feel is a championship core four, but they also don't want to be in a position to where if they are to be stuck, you have to choose. You have to choose options or not options. And that to me is like a big struggle here. Let's talk more about that. And we'll talk about Boston's reload and all these types of things. We'll do that next here on Locked On Nuggets. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you want to update your patio this season, WayFair has made it so easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours, comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. WayFair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space: conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and yes, even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. Man, I love a good set of string lights. It's like so great to sit out in the summer. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. Delivery's free, fast, and totally hassle-free, even with large items. And whether you're hosting friends or just unwinding with a book, it genuinely feels like it's going to be your own private retreat. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with WayFair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Jokic is Nuggets 200%. That is not true. The Nuggets will be here after Jokic retires. Like the Denver Nuggets were here before Jokic showed up, and they will be here after Jokic showed up. And you can appreciate and respect Jokic and want the best for him. And I love that so many fans have connected with him, and because he is this great, and you never get an all-time great like this. Right? It's not just like he's the best player in franchise history. He's the best player in franchise history who's also an all-time great. And so I understand that connection. But like Nikola Jokic is not the Nuggets. And I think it's fair for fans to still be considerate of the fact that like most people are fans. More people are fans of the Denver Nuggets than they are of Nikola Jokic, even though Jokic is immensely popular. That's me. That's how I feel. How for you, Swipa, the Celtics thing I think is really interesting, right? Because they moved Drew Holiday, which was a pretty tough contract. And what they did was, I mean, look, I don't like Simons. I've never liked Simons. Simons is basically older Jalen Green. Like the metrics are eerily similar.
I mean, he's a good jump shooter, good pull-up shooter. So, he has some value. I see it.
Sure. Is he Drew Holiday? No. Like Drew's still more valuable than him.
No, he's just much younger, making $25 million a year.
Yeah, so he's cheaper. So they move that, and they get some second rounders, and they'll probably put those second rounders to use. They might trade Simons again, and that to me again is like part of this thing. But they also traded a part of their core. Like they were willing to part with Drew. They weren't. That I think is what has been frustrating. They still talked about it yesterday, like in between all these other comments that we had to deal with, is like the assertion of just like, well, we know this is a championship team, and like they still feel that way. Like they still feel like their best five can win it all. And after taking the Thunder to 7, regardless of how I feel about that series, I can't argue with that. Like I can't. I have to concede the point of you are one game away from beating OKC, and then who knows? You are that close to beating the team that won the championship. So even though I look at it and go, like, well, actually, the starter numbers weren't great in that series and all these other metric points, it's impossible for me to really argue that core is not a championship level core. I just don't know how they expect to get a championship level roster and keep that championship level core. Yeah, so I want to get your thoughts on that before we move on.
Well, they just seem to be stuck on the margins, and I again ask, what are the margins? John Wallace, who I was most hopeful about listening, stated that he believes that it comes down to the shooting, defense, and internal development. So meaning that it sounds like they're going to be looking for shooters, they're going to be looking for defenders, and then they're going to be looking forward to internal development with DA/David Adelman, and hoping that Strother, Peyton Watson, Pickett, Tyson, Brown, and then hopefully the young guns will continue to take steps forward. And then that way they'll be in situations where they can use having more depth, adding one or two more players to the roster, and basically hoping that internal development plus health. Because I think in their brain, they believe that the biggest difference between them and OKC or them and winning the title again for a second year is health. Michael Porter Jr. with a shoulder injury, Aaron Gordon obviously with the lower body injury, and had those things not happened, then they would have won the championship. And again, I don't exist in that framework of, yes, I think they should have beat the Thunder if they were healthy. But that's more me predicated on matchups. I think that the Thunder are a good matchup for Denver for many different reasons. I think the Wolves are a harder matchup for Denver for different reasons. And I think that you want to be able to win on the margins consistently. And I think the Nuggets don't have a lot of versatility outside their starting five. Go ahead.
Does it matter if you win on the margins if you can't win in the I guess whatever the main block is, right? So like there is a thing here where you lose sight of, well, we got to win on the margins. The reason OKC went to 7 with Denver and the Pacers, I think, is because they win the margins by so much, and when those margins shrink, they struggle when they had to beat the main thing, which is half-court offense versus half-court defense. And Denver's really strong in both those areas. So, like, is there an argument to be made of, well, look, I don't want to sacrifice the main thing for the margins?
No, because I don't believe functionally at this point. Michael Porter Jr. has played in 4 series since the title. He's played good in 1 of those series. Michael Porter Jr. has played in on the way to win the title. He's played in 12, at this point, he's played in 10 series, I believe. Good in the Wolves series in the first round. I think he had a really good series. He was pretty okay in the Suns series. Not great in the Lakers series. Really up and down in the Heat series until Game 5.
Yeah. He did more things in that Heat series than the shooting.
Yeah, I think the rebounding, the backside rotations, all that stuff was fine. But that's what I'm saying. At this point in time, I can say he's played in 3 to 2.5 good series in the last 3 years. I think that is a problem of versatility, ball handling. I just think he's much more limited in a confined space versus elite defenses than I think we're giving him credit for. I think there are real limitations to his game. Go ahead.
I agree with you. My question here, I think, is I want to just kind of get like a delineation here. Are you of the opinion that they need to break up the core 4 and any configuration of that in order to get more talent is positive? Or are you of the opinion that they just got to trade MPJ? You're good with keeping the core 4, which is Brown, Gordon, Murray, Jokic, if they move MPJ?
No, it's the first one. I don't think Brown is on pace to get $25-30 million this offseason, purportedly. I'm saying that that also seems like a stretch, given how reliant he on specific things that happen over the course of a regular season game or even playoff games that give him his points where he scores, where he shoots from. And I think defensively, he had a lot of things that he added to the roster. But for me, I don't think that no one on the roster for me other than 15 is probably one that's unmovable. And the question becomes, Matt, if Aaron Gordon, for instance, is your most positive contract and your best player that has no downside, if you knew that Aaron Gordon was a pathway to getting more versatility and becoming a better overall unit, would you be willing to move him? And I think for the Nuggets, they have to be willing to explore that option. Now, I'm saying I would rather, I think for a fit standpoint and a culture standpoint, which is really important, I think Murray and Porter are the ones that are more likely to be the ones that you would be willing to adjust and move. But I think in terms of improving the team, I think the team needs to be improved. And I think go ahead.
Sorry, but what you're talking about is basically like, this is what all fans want to trade their bad good players for great good players and keep their great good players. And like, this is more of like, look, if you want to really upgrade the team, you got to trade your great good players, which is Gordon and Christian. Like I have moved to the belief of like, man, if you sell high early, that's the best way for you to go about it.
Yeah, Bill Belichick. Yeah.
And that's where they're stuck. And this is where ownership is, I think, really, really kind of stuck in their ways. Can't trade Gordon. Look at what just happened. He's Jokic's favorite teammate. Okay, can't trade Christian. He's young. Look at so much upside. He's got so much room to grow. And then it's, well, we can't trade Murray and Porter. Their value isn't good enough. Well, you can't trade one because it's too high. You can't trade the other because it's too low. And I do understand it from their point of view of just like fans. I do think fans think that they can trade Jamal Murray and get like a dynamite package back. fans think that they can trade Michael Porter Jr. and get a good package back. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's true, guys. I just don't know.
Well,
Like,
I think Murray has more value on leading Drew Holiday does for sure. And I think it's just a matter of like what that would look like.
But also, like, would you have wanted to trade Jamal Murray for Anthony Simons? I would be rioting if I was a Nuggets fan that did that. Rioting.
I mean,
wow.
We have different.
Think he's better?
No, I think Matt, you're lost in like another world on some of this stuff than me. I think that it's more so about the process of.
Yeah, I hear you.
What are two things that are happening? Are you trying to open money to have flexibility, or are you trying to acquire talent? Right now, they're doing neither of them. They have no flexibility. They're doing neither.
I agree.
And they have no talent. So if you're trading for Anthony Simons, I'm saying in that occasion, then you're saying we're adding for flexibility and a young player that has no injury history. But that player's about to be up off a contract, and he's making $25 million a year. So go ahead.
They're taking the path of least resistance because they don't want to disrupt something good. And I do believe that you can make perfect the enemy of good. I do think that that's a thing. I just think that they are too emotionally attached to the members of this core that won them a title. Because
even John Wallace said it yesterday.
That's what's crazy about it is everyone's like, well, they're just cheap. And I'm like, guys, if they were cheap, they would trade MPJ. They would trade MPJ for bad players who were cheaper because they would just be able to be like, we still have Jokic. Who cares? We'll save the money. That's a cheap move, right? And so they're doing neither. And you've talked about this, about understanding the assignment. And I do think that this is where the Jokic fans do have like the point, which is, look, there is no move that you're going to make that is going to hurt the Nuggets beyond 5 years. No deal in the NBA hurts you beyond 5 years. Like maybe aside from the draft pick stuff. And even then you can figure out how to trade stuff later and get back into drafts. There's always these opportunities, right? The window is now, and you have to look at these things. It is unfortunate that Jokic's greatness demands that you be cold-blooded, that you surrender some of that family atmosphere that you've tried to cultivate, that you actually kind of compromise some of the culture that you worked really hard to reestablish after that terrible period in the 2010s. You built a good culture, but that culture was built by Michael Malone and then reinforced by Jokic. That's where that culture comes from on NBA teams. And you have to be cold-blooded now to assert we have an all-time great, and that supersedes all of these other things. Somebody asked, like, so Matt, you think they should trade Jokic instead of trading all these other players? Of course not. No. My answer to that question of what Josh was asked was, if there are these, you avoid the situation. You put yourself in a position where we will never be in a position where we, quote, have to trade Nikola Jokic.
Well,
that would be my position.
This is going to be year 11 for Jokic.
Yep.
Giannis he got drafted in what was that, 13 or 15? 13, I think. So this is going to be year 12 for Giannis, I think, maybe.
Yep.
With one organization, when do we see that, Matt? I mean, genuinely, like when's the last time we've seen that? Kobe asked out. Obviously, they traded, but he asked out. They got him Paul Gasol because they just knew they couldn't get rid of Kobe Bryant. And I think that Shaq obviously left the Magic. Then he goes to the Lakers, leaves the Lakers, goes to the Heat. I just think for me, it's like the Nuggets are very comfortable because they just have a player that's extremely comfortable, that is very comfortable in Denver and that likes being in Denver and likes the situation and likes the training staff and, you know, likes the front office and likes these people. I'm saying it. It's very much like a family atmosphere. And what I'm saying is that, like, I think they've gotten so comfortable in that thing that they're in that they're just kind of, I think you're looking at Jokic still like he was like his 2018-19 a little bit. Like you have time. Like when they went down, when Jamal Murray went down with an injury, then Michael Porter went down with an injury, they it's almost as if they were like, okay, we have time, we can wait for them to come back and we can retool. Jokic is 30 now. Like maybe he's LeBron. Maybe he gives you 8 more years of MVP level play. But the question is, like, are you going to be able to look back and say that you maximized that window as best as you could, or to your point, were you too attached to certain players that very much like Michael Malone did their time, had their purpose at that time, but now you're at a place where everyone's an adult now. Porter's the youngest member of the core now. He's turning 20. He's turning 28 this year in June. I think he just turned 28, or July. He might just turn 28. Like, we're 27. We're in a different place now, man. I just think that, like, I think I just think this is grow up time. And right now, I think they're just they're far too comfortable. Far too comfortable.
I mean, I don't disagree with that. I kind of agree with that assessment. I don't know how you can look at Porter at this point. Now, the missing X factor here is we do not know what those conversations are like. And like, you have to admit that. Like, it's important to me, at least, to be accurate. One of the reasons why I fight so hard when people are like, why are, somebody's like, why are you taking both sides? And the answer is, again, you need to be able to level criticisms at ownership that they can't refute. Because otherwise you're just yelling. And I don't think that that's effective criticism. But if you're able to say like, look, I don't know what MPJ's offer is on the market, because that's the missing X factor here is we presume like, well, he loves MPJ because he went to Columbia and that's why he won't trade him. And I do think that he cares about Mike. I do think he cares. Of course. I've talked to executives a lot. That's the hardest part of this. You do care about these guys that you've invested in and that you've won with. Mike proved everybody wrong. He sacrificed and contributed to a championship team. Everyone said he wouldn't be able to play. So he has killed himself trying to be available for as many games as possible.
Yeah, of course.
But on some level also is like this understanding of, I just wonder if the missing X factor here is just like, there is not an offer for MPJ that would make the team better.
Well, to be fair, we've heard MPJ's name now tied up in a Paul George deal last year. I mean, let's say it like this. Paul George was rumored to be in conversation with Denver last year with the Clippers trade. We heard Kevin Durant this year. The contracts that are only movable in a situation are Porter, like typically. Like Murray can. Like that's another one. But I'm saying it seems like the front office is open to it for the right move and or deal. But what I don't want to happen, Matt, I think for me is like, from a basketball process standpoint, if they come into this year with the same team and just some I mean super marginal ads like a Luke Kennard and a Daniel Tice, and they come into the next season and that's their adjustment and that's their change after what we've seen for the last 2 years, for me it's just kind of like, I don't even know if they're expecting Jamal Murray to take a leap. I don't even know if they're expecting Michael Porter Jr. to take a leap. I really don't. I really truly do not know if they're expecting anything different than what they've gotten. And for me, I think that is also problematic. That it's just very, very, very stationary. But who knows?
I think for them, like a lot of organizations, I think they're opportunistic. This is my experience in the NBA. And you can not care about this, and that's fine. I'm just trying to give you perspective. So, like, one of the things that's funny in these comments is the fans are like, what if Jamal comes into camp out of shape again, like an obese diabetic? That's a literal comment here. He's one of, like, the 300 best basketball players on the planet. He's one of the best 100 players on the planet, and he's not closer to 100 than he is to 50. Okay? But that's how he's talked about. And yet, at the same time, there's this idea of, that's why you should trade him for Desmond Bane. Like, where I get to is, if there's an opportunity that they can't pass up, this is something that Conley honestly taught me, is that you never close yourself off to opportunities. That's why them basically shutting down the talks of MPJ were, I think, to me, either frustrating or alarming, because it was either you chose not to engage in those conversations because you're just like, no, we believe in MPJ, and that's misguided because he's your only path out of the CBA problem, or you can't trade him, and that's equally problematic because now you have this asset that's just like dead.
Well, and by the way,
huge asset.
You in your brain, you said that in the CBA, your best strategy is you would have 2 big contracts and everybody else is kind of is filler around that. Well, guess what? If Christian Brown gets signed, how many big contracts are they going to have? 5.
Yeah. Yep. Now, Christian's at that number that I think is actually acceptable, where it's like 30? You could have Jokic and Gordon, and then, or even Jokic and Jamal. You could have Jokic and Jamal and then Christian and then a bunch of other guys, and that's fine. Christian's in that range. He's going to be in that range of guys that I think you can have one of those guys. But what you can't have is you can't have Jokic and Jamal and Gordon, and for another year, MPJ, and then also Christian. Nope, that doesn't work. You got to turn 2 of those into smaller deals. You just, I don't see how you can't. I just don't. Because you're either in. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the Magic they're gonna have. So I think, for instance, Suggs is making 30. Paolo's maxed out rookie. Will be maxed out rookie. I think 247. Paolo will be there. Franz is maxed out. I think 224. Bane is at 197, I believe, on the deal that he's on. I think he has 3 more years left on that one. And then I think Wendell Carter Jr. is making 18. Now that's a little bit of an older strategy. They have a lot of big contract, but I would say they're so young. Like Bane is the oldest player in that rotation. He's 26. So I think that's survivable. The Nuggets, on the other hand, based on the injury stuff, based on the level of play, based on what we're projecting, I don't think that is what it's going to end up being for the Nuggets on the other end. But like I said, we'll find out. We'll see.
We're late, but I don't care because I love these conversations with you. I want to ask you this because I had this thought today because I was trying to think like what can we talk about with the draft tonight. I am choosing not to go to Denver for the watch party because they will not make the guys available tonight. And I was just like, what are the odds that they do something that will demand them being available? So I am jinxing this to present you with an opportunity for a big draft night trade for the Nuggets. It'd be really funny after we had this entire conversation at the trade MBJ tonight. But I want to ask you this, Swipa. Let's say theoretically that you could trade into the top. This is where the number really cares. I care about the number very much here. If you could trade one of the young guys or two of the young guys and get into the back 10, I would not do it. But I will ask you, if you could trade Strother and Payton and get into the top 20, would you do it?
Can I get close to lottery?
You can get close, but not in.
15? Or 16 or 17?
Let's give you, let's say a multi-team trade where the Wolves actually move back a little bit because I know there's a guy that they like there. And let's say that you get the Wolves at 17.
Okay. So Payton and Strother. Man, I think I would be open to it, but they have not had a lot of luck, I think, in the draft overall outside of Christian Brown. So I would be open to it, but they better very well believe that the player they grab at 17 is going to be a high level rotation player, like their Andrew Nembhard, whatever that's going to look like. So if they're putting all their assets on the table, that means they know exactly who they want. Like I'm talking about, like they know literally exactly who they want. And if they were to do that and get that player, then I think that would be, I'd be open to it. That would open up another roster spot. So they would have 4 open roster spots at that point.
Right.
Taxpayer MLE.
Yep. That's why
veterans.
Danny says it makes no sense. That's the other part of this is that by clearing roster spots, you have more slots to bring in more guys. So even if you miss again on a free agent or taxpayer MLE guy, you have another swing on a veteran.
So if I told you, let me say this. If I told you they got, just to paint a picture for you, they trade Strother and they trade Peyton Watson. Let's say they get, I mean, I'll just do CT here. Just say they get Walter Clayton from Florida, right?
Yeah. Right.
They then add Bruce Brown with the taxpayer pair. They add, let's say, Marvin Bagley, because you love Marvin on vet men.
I do.
And let's say they get Luke Kennard on vet men. So now Walter Clayton, Luke Kennard, Marvin Bagley, and Bruce Brown. Is that a better team?
I like that roster a lot better than last year's.
Same. Like you don't have Peyton Watson's rim protection in the wing defense, but I mean, is Luke Kennard a more dependable shooter than
Peyton can wind up being an all-star. I think Peyton still has all-star talent. I am the main property holder now on Julian Strother Island. Everyone else left, and I stayed and expanded my empire. But I still look at this and go, if you can create another roster spot and be able to bring it. Now, the question here is like, oh no, you can't get Luke Kennard. He's going to go here. Oh no, you can't get Marvin Bagley. His agent's already got him going here, right? And you wind up with worse guys, right? You end up with James Wiseman.
Off an Achilles. Right? You better than DeAndre Jordan?
It's a question. Now, every team that he's been on has literally been worse because of him, which is rough for that kid.
Because of him is crazy. I saw Jalen Duren and him make a 2-man game at the high-low that was working kind of nice for the Achilles injury. Look, I mean, you got to take some gambles somewhere, man. I really just If they had 3 more adults in the room, man, I just think you would feel better about the team. No,
I
please
agree.
no. Yeah, please no, Killian Hayes. He's going to stay in Germany where he is.
Yeah. So, but anyway, those are that was just like an idea that I had. But I will say, if it's like, hey, you can trade Peyton and Julian to get to the 22nd, no way. Like the gap between 22nd and 17th is important to me. It's very important to me. You get no more bottom 10 guys.
What if Cam Whitmore was in this draft and they traded up to 18 and drafted Cam Whitmore?
Great.
You would feel good about that?
Yeah.
That kind of player, yeah.
You need somebody with on-ball explosiveness. You need. Okay, that'll do it for Locked On Nuggets. I appreciate you guys being with us. I love this edition of Swipe and Gripe. It was a really great episode today. I had a really good conversation with Swipa. I appreciate everybody's input and expertise. Everybody deserves respect. Everybody deserves consideration. Thanks for joining us. We'll have more on the draft tonight, no matter what they do. We'll get Ryan and I's reaction to the draft, and if the Nuggets don't do anything, we will talk about why. Shows all throughout the week. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets. I've lost my stuff.